All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the Classworks Fall Virtual Summit. This year, we're doing a virtual passport for you guys to win a $100 Amazon gift card. And the rules are pretty simple with that. You're going to check in using this link at either the beginning of a session or the end of a session. You've just had to be attending live, and we are going to just reference that. And each session that you attend will give you a stamp on your virtual passport. So just like the one you see on screen, and each stamp that you get contributes due to another entry to win that gift card. So it's very simple. More sessions you attend, the more stamps you receive, the more chances you have to win that $100 Amazon gift card. If you have any questions about the passport system, feel free to ask via the chat, and we'll answer any questions at the end of today's session. I will post that link into the chat just right now so you guys can easily click it, and I'll also post it again at the end of the session, so don't feel like you have to check in just right now. But let me type that in there, fscheckin.classworks.com. So you can copy and paste that into your browser. And that being said, I think we'll give like a minute for people to just do that quickly, and then I will turn it over to you, Judy and Melissa.
All right, we ready? All right. Well, hi, we are so excited to be the kickoff session for our 2020 Virtual Fall Summit. I'm Judy Teven, and with me today is Melissa Sinanu, and we are going to chat today about something that is on all of our minds and already happening in some schools, which is transitioning students back to the classroom. So right now, the desks in your classroom may be filling up slowly, right? So for many teachers, this is a sigh of relief. The pressure of teaching half of the students virtually and half of them in person has been daunting, right? To say the least. Now, in today's session, we want you to feel free to be part of this discussion. So please use the chat to make comments and ask or answer questions. So we want to get you involved right off the bat. So here's a question to answer. You can just throw your answers into the chat box. Do you expect in-person class size to increase next semester? So A would be a great yes, a great deal. B would be yes, but probably just a few. C would be no. You think it's going to pretty much stay the same. D would be, I think we're all going to end up virtual at some point and then go back and forth. So if you can throw your answers in chat, we'd just love to hear what's going on with you guys.
Just a few. Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, we've been talking to so many partner districts. We've been talking to some parents, and we're hearing a lot of the same things. Not too many. Yeah. And it's really hard to do all that juggling, right? Even I think some of the things we're going to talk about today will apply to that as well. We've got a great deal out there. So we've got some folks that are going to be coming back to school. All right, well, great. I think we've got some great conversation today that is going to give you some little tips and tricks, really, and honestly, maybe even just let you know some experiences that we're hearing from other districts. That's always good to hear. But just know that today we're going to talk about some things that I think you're going to find are going to support you in your classroom this year.
So there are some specific challenges associated with the transition back to in-person instruction for more students. So this session is not about the logistics that I know you spent so much energy on already, right? Keeping students and teachers safe as they return is not what we're going to discuss. This session focuses on meeting the instructional and SEL challenges as students begin to return to the classroom. This could mean that what was a class of 10 is now a class of 20, or it might be the transition from all virtual to just a few students in the classroom. Either way, the work teachers do to establish those optimal classroom dynamics doesn't just take place the first few weeks of school this year. It's going to be happening in some form, or it is happening in some form all year long. So in today's session, we're going to focus on some practical tips that we have heard for effectively filling the classroom, and where appropriate, we try to connect those to Classworks and your use of Classworks. So the areas that we're touching on for today's session are meeting students' social and emotional needs, the effective use of data, continuing to use your LMS even as students come back to the classroom, and then classroom management with shifting student personnel in the classroom, student stamina, and then finally reflecting on that virtual experience. So first and foremost, you will have a constantly changing classroom dynamic as students transition from virtual to in-person, or perhaps if they need to quarantine, transition the other way. So the social and emotional needs of your students amid these shifting dynamics, it definitely adds another layer to the classroom. And there are so many positives to integrating your SEL initiatives into everything you are doing, and this really includes your Classworks implementation. So Classworks has two specific features that are designed to enhance your SEL initiatives, whether you are at home or at school. The first is the observation section of the program, where you can document and encourage student positive behaviors and academic performance. And because it's digital, this can be used anywhere and everywhere. All teachers can see what is happening every class period, and parents and students can see it as well. So just to show you exactly what we're talking about here, this is the student observations. You see that a teacher can determine if it's positive or negative, add if they're academic or behavioral observations. And then while the demo site might say Classworks administrator, when you log in, an observation will identify the teacher making the observation. Then this is seen by the student when they launch the My Scores portion of Classworks, but it can also be shared with parents so they can see in real time the feedback about students. You simply click on the badges section and you share that link with parents, and then this link is always live and it's always in real time. So this is an enhancement for this fall, the ability to see those student observations by students and by parents. So really everyone is seeing it. We're not having to gather those student signatures to see that, right? Now, our fall summit has a session on Monday the 26th that goes into great detail about how to effectively take advantage of all the features of Classworks as you address your student social and emotional needs. And this also includes not only the digital PBIS worksheet that we just showed you, but also a sneak peek at the new digital goal tracking that we're rolling out in just a few months. You'll learn all about using goal tracking to set goals with each student and get a sense of each student's emotional well-being wherever learning is happening.
Now, and then as you hopefully start to get more students returning safely to the classroom, there's a whole new dynamic to consider, right? Connecting with the students who were previously learning virtually. So it's going to be important to spend some time with those students who are learning virtually to get to know them as they interact in that classroom. The more the students can interact with the teacher, can spend time with all of the students, right? And the more cohesive the group will be when they're all back together. Our research brought us to Elaine Allensworth, the director of the University of Chicago Consortium on School Research. And this consortium has extensively studied principals' roles in shaping school climate. And she said, and this isn't necessarily about a social relationship between teacher and student. Students want to know that their teachers are going to help them succeed in school, right? It's what we all want, right? So there are some specific things that can be done to make just this happen. Let's start with recommending that the new students attend office hours at least once a week for the first 3 weeks that they are back at school. This gives you a less structured time to better understand their needs, their strengths and weaknesses. And some research argues that support like office hours should be something that students have to opt out of rather than opt into, right? So in other words, make office hours mandatory at least once a week for students instead of when they just might need it, right? So review their virtual work and then compare it to the work that they're completing in the first week in the classroom. Is it consistent? Is there an indicator that perhaps they're still struggling with learning remotely or vice versa?
And then gather the data. right? It's a good idea to screen students once they rejoin your physical classroom. As you know, Classworks includes valid and reliable screeners for grades K through 8 in reading and math. These are vertically scaled tests that only take about 30 minutes to complete, that give a great picture of exactly where students are ready to learn. So administering these once students are back in the classroom will ensure your comfort with the data gathered while kids were at home. Many principals we spoke with said that rescreening was a key part of their strategy as students transition from virtual to in-person learning. Now, while most of your students probably gave an accurate screening from home, there are exceptions, right? Both scenarios came up in our conversations. Students that maybe didn't try when working from home, all the way to students whose parents may have tried way too hard on their behalf. So either way, it's really important to accurately screen students. So many of our partner districts are administering the Classworks Universal Screener as part of an intake as soon as students return to the classroom. And then to review this data. If you're only running this report for a subset of your whole class, you might want to look at the formative recommendations report that's up on the screen. So for example, looking at this data, you can see that geometry is an area of concern for all the students or almost all the students, while operations appears to have emerged relatively unscathed from pandemic learning. Then, more specifically, we can see that Hans and Stephanie are likely in need of urgent intervention. So this formative recommendations report tells you specifically the strengths and weaknesses of students by strand, as well as gives you their nationally normed percentile rank. And of course, the percentile rank is often used as a data source for tier placement in RTI. Of course, the results of this assessment will also automatically inform their place in the Classworks learning progression. This will assign students skills to catch up on where they may have fallen behind, and that actually might be the biggest benefit of all. If you have a group of new students that all transition from virtual to in-school learning at the same time, you can also inform dynamic grouping with the screener grouping report. You can run the report for all the students in your class. Now, even if some took the screener earlier in the year than others, you can still run the report, obviously, for the whole class. This will offer you suggested grouping for students based on what you are teaching. For example, this is a second grade. Let's say you're about to do a unit on inches and feet. This fits into the domain of measurement. This report gives you an immediate grouping for the students, or a suggested grouping. Again, no matter when or where they took the test this fall. It's important to resist the temptation to put all the new kids into one group. Integrate groups based on ability or other grouping criteria. So this was just 2 quick reports, but almost all of our sessions talk about data and effective use of data. But the 2 sessions, one using Classworks for RTI, MTSS on Wednesday, October 21st, and then the high stakes session that Judy and I are doing actually this Friday, October 23rd, both discuss the process of screening, effectively grouping students, and even progress monitoring. Now, the next thing we want to discuss on today's webinar is that love-hate relationship we may have with our LMS.
So, bottom line, continue to use your LMS. It's even with the students back in the classroom. So let's think about this. For our purposes, when we say LMS, we are referring to all learning management systems, right? So you're thinking about Canvas, Schoology, Brightspace, eClass, Verge, It's Learning, LMS 365 that's in Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, and many more, right? The vision that your district had when they invested in the LMS most certainly did not include a sudden shift to online learning in the middle of March last spring, right? The vision was for this to be a classroom tool that helps teachers and students both, right? However, if you are like most systems, it was a support tool, not a mandate. But now we're all getting comfortable, right, in those LMSs. So let's look at what those advantages are of fully implementing and continuing to embrace your learning management system. All right, students transitioning back to the classroom can complete selected assignments in the LMS that ensure that they're catching up with the rest of the class. Now, as you may or may not know, Classworks units can be loaded into your LMS and completed by students from within the LMS specifically and graded. These may be assignments that you decide that may need to be like a catch-up lesson, or work that they didn't get to while they were learning from home. Because we've heard so many stories about teachers seeing the discrepancy between the curriculum pace in the classroom compared to the online curriculum pace, this really foreshadows the challenges that we're going to face when the students, the virtual students, start coming back into the physical school building. So once again, this speaks to the importance of built-in intervention periods and office hours. This is the time that catch-up work, whether it's in the LMS or in Classworks, really is important to be completed.
Well, and the other argument for the LMS is the unpredictability of this school year and the pandemic itself. Like thinking back to your answers on the survey at the beginning, thinking that maybe a bunch of kids are going to stay remote, right? And we just talked to one of our partners in Kentucky. They color code their counties based on your color, like red, orange, yellow. Students are allowed back in the classroom. Just as they hope to be transitioning back to the classroom and did all the prep work for this, they're back in the red and back to virtual. So consistent use of that LMS is even more important when we think about that. Just to keep talking about how great our fall summit is, we do have a session Monday, October 26th about using your LMS effectively. But remember, you can always schedule free Connect sessions with a Classworks expert to learn exactly how this works for you with your learning management system. If it's hard to connect, like we use It's Learning, and you're talking about Schoology as your example, sometimes those Connect sessions are even better. So the next aspect of transitioning students back into the classroom is a big one: classroom management.
So when we think about classroom management, we think about the dynamics among students, between the teachers and the students, and really setting expectations early in the year. However, this year, it's a whole new ballgame, right? We have kids in and out of the classroom, virtual students transitioning back into the classroom, and frustrated students who are usually on grade level struggling with some of the instructional content. So when a new student joins a class, there is always a transition period. So they have to learn all the expectations and processes within the classroom itself. One of the principles that we talked to discuss the importance of not putting that expectation on the teacher for the new group of students. It's hard to do that and simultaneously teach the curriculum. So she's an alternative school principal. Her dynamics, she was telling us, are always in flux. In addition to screening and intakes, the students are partnered with a parapro. And that person helps them navigate the expectations of the school day, manage like the transitions, and really think through everything that they need for school, right? To be able to do that. Hold on, that really threw me off. I think about what we're doing. So in general, to keep that burden off of the teacher, right? So the teacher can continue to deliver direct instruction and work with small groups throughout the day. As our classrooms begin to hopefully grow again this school year, schools are considering how best to manage this integration of new students without interfering with the instructional time. The idea of assigning that parapro or even a student teacher to guide students through the expectations of a school day is even more valuable.
Right. I mean, this January, you may have students who haven't experienced the structure and expectations of a physical school day since last March. And to expect a classroom teacher to both instruct, help everyone catch up from last year, and teach students the expectations of school is simply too much for teachers to be able to do successfully. The biggest thing the classroom teacher should be given the capacity to do is make learning for both virtual and in-person students as engaging, as relevant as possible. Then hopefully the rest will fall into place with the right supports from your school.
And I do have a few strategies to share that we heard from teachers as more students are returning to the classroom. So for example, have a get to know you, like sharing time for students that were participating virtually and are now in person in class. In addition to that, parapro, assign a student who has already been in the classroom to kind of be a host to the student. So that's new to the physical classroom, so they can support their acclimation back. And as we talked about in the social emotional learning section of this, try to spend time with each of the new students, right? Possibly during those office hours.
And all of these strategies might be great, but we are still going to be faced with the issue of student stamina, right? As students transition back to the classroom, there's going to be a fairly significant adjustment to the rules of school, right? As eager as most students are to return to the classroom, they will still have that period of adjustment. Right, the virtual student can snack during class, dress codes don't really exist, nobody needs permission to go to the bathroom down the hall, and it might not take too long to adjust. It is important to decide how you're going to ensure all students can effectively adjust back to classroom life. So in between the stamina building games and activities you're probably already doing, how can Classworks help? So first, there are some extension activities built into every single Classworks unit that allow for some more active, hands-on learning and problem solving of specific skills. These are a great way to get students re-engaged in learning.
And then when they're on the computer, this might mean setting smaller goals for assignments to be completed. Now, while we traditionally like students to complete at least 2 units a week in Classworks per subject, you might start with only 1 unit a week per subject. This is also where students conferencing and information about time spent on each unit really comes into play. Use this time to reinforce expectations, reassign instruction below 80%. This sets the clear expectation for students and allows you to guide them. These conferences or conversations are short, like 5-minute connections that mean so much to students and can make such a difference with their outcomes. As you concentrate on quality over quantity with Classwork skills, students will slowly build up the stamina to learn at the rate that we are expecting.
And then finally, reflection on the virtual experience. Especially as a lot of the survey responses thought you are going to do a lot of virtual and stay virtual, you might decide that there are some modifications you want to make to your virtual approach after evaluating what worked and what didn't with some remote learners now back in the classroom. So as students begin transitioning back, you may find they are further behind than you expected. Did the students learning feel like they were part of the class? We heard a comment recently that students who are virtual sometimes feel like they are watching the learning happening in the classroom. This not only hinders the virtual students' learning, but it impacts the students' attitude about being part of that class. So one implementation idea that we heard that was interesting was that no matter where learning was happening, all the students were in the class via Zoom. So this really leveled the direct instruction time for all students. Everyone asks questions and participates at the same time via the same medium. This also makes the transition back to the classroom a little easier, knowing that learning will still be conducted the same way until life returns to normal.
And we've got some other really good ideas, like partner with an in-class student, partner that student with a remote learning student. Students could work on a project together or do something as simple as read a book together. Then, switch up those pairs. This really builds relationships between the students so that then when the students joining the class later, they're enthusiastically greeted by their classmates. And I think it bears repeating to set aside that time to work with virtual students one-on-one during office hours to continue to build relationships.
So those were the topics that we wanted to cover today. Thank you for joining us for today's session and about transitioning students back to the classroom. We know you are likely doing all of these things and much more to support effectively learning in your classrooms, but hopefully we showed you some simple ways that Classworks can support your efforts. Whether it is meeting students' SEL needs, effectively using data, tips for your LMS, classroom management, student stamina, and finally, reflecting on some improvements to the virtual experience.
So as a reminder, we wanted to share the agenda for the rest of the Fall Summit. Like we said at the beginning, this was our kind of our kickoff session for the whole thing. These sessions are going to go into deeper dives. I know Melissa referenced some of those, really looking at specific features of Classworks that are designed to make your life easier and maximize student growth. So these are majority of 30-minute sessions, unless we noted that it's a workshop, and then it would be a little bit more interactive and be 45 minutes. So Wednesday, October 21st, we have using Classworks for RTI MTSS, and this is a workshop. Thursday, October 22nd, we have using Classworks for Tier 1 instruction. Friday, we have using high stakes tests this year, 6 strategies for success, which is also a workshop. Melissa said she and I are going to be doing that with you guys. Monday, October 26th is using your LMS effectively, which we did talk about today too. Also on Monday, we've got social and emotional learning and your academic intervention, and we'll see you for that too. Tuesday, October 27th, in the morning, we're going to have a session about getting families comfortable with technology. And then in the afternoon, hear from your peers. We've got some really great conversations from some boots on the ground districts that are sharing their experiences with virtual learning. Wednesday, October 28th, we have strategies for success in special education, which is a workshop. It was great about with IEP goals. Thursday, October 29th, what's new and what's coming in Classworks. We've got some real exciting things happening we want to share. And finally, Thursday, October 29th, 5 things you should know about Classworks, which is really a great session for somebody who maybe in our Classworks family from the district, but they don't know a lot about Classworks. So that would be a good thing for them to attend. So we're super excited to see everybody this week, and we appreciate y'all being here with us, and I think we have time for any questions.
Yes, we have had a couple of questions come through. Actually, Judy, before we go to the questions, if you want to go to that next slide, we can address the All-Star Contest real quick. So guys, we are also announcing that our All-Star Contest is about to kick off. So head to the contest section of our webpage if you go to classworks.com. And you scroll to the bottom in the gray section, there's a contests button. Hit that, it'll give you all of the information you need. As many of you know, this is our annual contest. We do this every year. It's our way of rewarding our rock star or our all-star, I should say, students and teachers, top 500 students with the highest time on task, above 80% mastery, will be winning a special prize from Classworks. And we also have some incentives for teachers as well. We want to hear about the strategies that you guys are using throughout the year. But first, head to the website, get more information on that. You can also follow on social. We'll be posting updates there. And of course, the blog is a great place to subscribe. But back to the questions. We did have a couple come through. If you guys have any questions, just load them in chat. Feel free to unmute yourselves and chime in. But the first one we received is about screening at home. So we mentioned screening and rescreening. Does Classworks provide any resources to help parents with their students screening at home?
So we actually have a whole section devoted to helping parents understand what the test is about, how to provide a good test environment. We've got both letters that you can send home, but also videos that parents can watch to help understand the expectations, and really emphasizing the idea that it's not about your student getting all of the right answers. It's about understanding where they are, right? It's that whole progress over perfection concept around screening. So it really emphasizes that so that parents aren't anxious about helping.
The next question I have is about learning management systems. Are teachers able to return grades through their learning management system?
Judy, do you want to?
Sure. So the Classworks work that would be put in there, that's all automatically graded. The students submit that through either, no matter what you're working with, Google Classroom or Schoology or any of those. I think that was what you guys were asking, but it's all automatically graded. Mm-hmm.
And then the last question I have, do you have any suggestions for incentives for students working virtually?
Yes. Well, we know we've been talking to, like we said, we've been doing a lot of research and talking to a lot of folks, and, ideas that have come out there are, you do have to to make a little bit of an extra effort to get the kids really excited, right, about things. So, we talked about having dance breaks in the, after you do so much work or so much time, or having like a little truth or dare or something with the teacher so that they could, whether they need to just have puppy time where they all share pets or their favorite stuffed animals or things like that. So all of that virtual kind of thing. And, the older kids, of course, are going to like the dance breaks and doing things like that. So you do have to kind of add all of those kinds of things in there. The other side of it is even beyond just like a reward, just like getting out of the box with how they actually produce their share their knowledge with you, like making a video instead of typing up an essay, right? Just really varying the methods of the work that the students are doing. So obviously just also so they're not on a computer all the time, but they're also not doing worksheets all the time, right? So it's important to really mix that up and to keep that going, to keep the kids going.
Danetta asked, will the RTI MTSS workshop give insight into progress monitoring?
Yes, the RTI MTSS workshop takes you all the way through from the screening to place students into tiers, effectively and easily progress monitoring with Classworks, which is one of our big benefits, and then also finally the intervention itself. So it'll take you through all the way through that cycle.
Oh, also, guys, Jennifer has linked our YouTube channel in there. Make sure you subscribe. We post all of our webinars there, and they're great, free resources for you guys to work through. Also, don't forget to check in at that fscheckin.classworks.com. That $100 Amazon gift card is literally sitting there waiting for you guys. So, make sure you enter to win. And those were all the questions I have. Should we give it another 30 seconds to see if anything else comes through?
Sure.
Yeah, we're excited to see everybody this week.
Thanks.
Thank y'all.
All right. We'll see you later.